You see that right there? You know what that is? This is oil ground. Oil ground made by Gamblin. This is different than traditional oil ground, which is lead based and takes up to months to dry. With Gamblin oil ground, it takes maybe about 2 weeks or so. I give it about 2 weeks, maybe a week. And it's ready to go. This is the best thing to use when you're painting on any surfaces, whether it's canvas, wood, some people paint on aluminum. When you're using oil paints, this is the best primer to use. The reason for that, it's non-absorbent. Now, typically, if you're painting on something like gesso with oil paint, you would need tons of coats. And if you just use the canvas as is, it's gonna sink. It's gonna sink under those layers, leaving it looking dull in some areas. Now, same applies when you apply a bunch of gesso, the same thing happens. With the oil ground, you don't get that. You do not get that at all. The oil paint stays right on the surface, keeping it nice and vibrant, keeping it looking good, making your work look exceptional, making your work look better than everybody else's. So today I'm going to be showing you how to apply this, what to do and what not to do. Before we get to that, I'm trying to grow this channel to 1,000 subscribers and beyond. I need you guys to hit that subscribe. You know, I'll give you a minute, hit that subscribe. All right, let's get into the video. All right, so let's talk about what you're gonna need to get this process started. First thing first, you're gonna need some gloves. Protect yourself, don't wreck yourself. Next, you're gonna need some GAC 100. This is to seal the wood, stop any damage or corroding. Next up, we're gonna need a paint spreader. This is gonna be used to spread the oil ground. Next up, we're gonna need a roller. Actually, I have the rolls right here. So we're gonna need a foam roller. This pretty much has no texture to it, but it will create texture on the canvas panel when you start rolling it. I'll explain that later. And of course, you're gonna need your oil ground. Now, one other thing I should mention, and you could do this if you want, is that you can get a mini mixer and you could get a jar or a ball or something, and you could actually mix your primer in that. I find it better when I do it on the palette, which leads me to my last two items. You're gonna need a palette. I got paint on this right now. And you're gonna need a palette knife. If you don't have a palette, any mixable surface is fine. So one thing I forgot to mention is that we need some green painter's tape, or any color painter's tape really, and we're just gonna put it around the edges. Next, we take our GAC 100. This is to protect the wood and stop any corroding and any damage to it on the surface. And what I do is I just spread it in one direction first. Then after an hour or so of it drying, I put a bit more on there, and then I spread it in the opposite direction. Get all the wood covered, get it all nice and sealed. Next, we take our oil ground. Now, it says to put this on thinly, so I do it according to the size of my panel or canvas, and I just take out a bit at first. There we pour some Gamsol in or paint thinner. We get it thin, and the first layer is always very thin, and we want it to spread very easy. Don't do what I do here. Use the scraper to scrape it off the palette. Don't use your palette knife. It takes forever and it's just pointless. Use the scraper, put it on, and then we take it and then we spread it all about the canvas, and we want to make sure that we're applying a good amount of pressure and we're getting it into every crevice and every area. After we do that, we take our foam roller and we just roll over areas and we even things out. Like I said, you want to get one that's not textured, but the foam will leave a little tiny bit of texture, which is what you want. You don't want nothing like a very fluffy type of furry brush. So as you see, this is why the tape around the edges was important, because it catches all the paint drips. and I'll explain later. Now you'll see some patchy areas, that's fine, this is just the first layer, and you'll see some blotches like that there, which you can just sand off. So now we're back again after it's touch dry, and we're gonna apply more oil ground. This time I'm scooping out a bit more than I initially did the first time because I want this to be a bit more thicker. Keep in mind too, you can apply 2 layers of oil ground, sometimes 3. Typically I go with 2. So I'm just gonna add some Gamsol here, not gonna add as much, but the thing is that we still wanna get a nice cream consistency when we mix it. Having that consistency is gonna allow it to spread better and allow it to mix better when we put it on our panel or canvas or whatever you're putting it on. So we just want to mix it in good. We want to try and not have any lumps or as little lumps as possible. So here it was still a little bit too thick, so I added more Gamsol to it to get that nice cream consistency that I was talking about. So now we're just repeating the process again, and this time I'm going in the opposite direction to try and cover more area, and I'm going over it again with my foam roller, just covering all the areas. All right, now if you remember, I said it's important to put this green tape on the edges if you do have a gallery style board or board with depth to it, right? Now, this is the reason why. You see all the drippings that ran down? Now, when we remove the tape, you still have that clean edge. Whereas I have a board here where I didn't do that, and you see what happened. So now I gotta go back and I gotta sand all of this down. Whereas if I had put the tape, I would have had a nice clean edge. There we have it, perfectly primed panel with oil ground. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope that helped you out. Peace.